In any game that allows for trading, scamming is unfortunately an inevitability. No matter how many safeguards or rails a game developer tries to put in place, people are going to find a way around them. Now, that isn't to say that Path of Exile's trading system is perfect, and that isn't to say that more can't be done to try to harden the system against scamming. And that might be something that I'll talk about in a future video. But since scamming is unavoidable so long as there's trade, I'm going to go with the best option to fight scamming, which is educating people who themselves might be scammed. And so today, I'm going to be talking about some common tricks that scammers use to distract you or to try to swindle you, and how to avoid falling into these traps. Now, the first scam that you might encounter is downloading Diablo Immortal. The end goal of this scam is to try to drain your bank account entirely by making you think that you're getting good value when you pay $25 per rift. Oh, wait a minute, that's not actually a scam in Path of Exile because Path of Exile is a real video game. So, moving on. One of the most common scams that I see is the currency swap scam. This tends to happen a lot on items that are fairly expensive. What someone will do is decline the trade after having put up all the correct currency to say, oh no, 0.5x is actually 83C, not 82C. You are paying me 1C too much. And then when you trade again, they put up something that's not the item you want, but looks very similar to the item you want. Pure breach stones in particular were a perfect target for this scam since they looked like a regular breach stone, which is why they now have their own unique icons, because this was a very serious problem. The best way to avoid this scam is to be very suspicious when someone declines the trade due to a small amount, especially if it's because you're overpaying. Most of the time, the scammer doesn't want to ask you for extra money, because that might annoy you and you might go buy from someone else. So they'll say, oh no, you're giving me too much money. But regardless of whether they say you're giving too much or too little, the best way to deal with this is very simple. If someone declines the trade, be very suspicious when they trade back. Make sure it is actually the item that you want, or if you're the one selling the item, make sure the currency matches. Make sure that they didn't switch out some of the exalts or try to confuse you with extra stacks of chaos. And if someone declines a trade multiple times and keeps getting the price wrong, it's probably best to buy from someone else or sell to someone else, as they're probably a scammer trying to make you annoyed and confused so that you just click accept without actually looking. Everyone can make mistakes sometimes, but normally people don't make mistakes with a price 4 or 5 times in a row. A scammer absolutely will, just to annoy you into clicking yes without reading. Now next up, I want to talk about the item scam. This is a scam that relies on players lacking knowledge. You'll be selling an item which is fairly valuable. Maybe you finally got a headhunter drop, your first ever super valuable item, and instead of putting it on, you're putting it up for sale. And someone will message you and say, hey, look, I have this grasping mail with overcapped fire res. There's none like it on the market. It's super rare, and you can sell it for well over 200 exalts. But unfortunately, I need a headhunter, and this is taking a little bit to sell. I guarantee it'll sell for way more than a headhunter. Do you want to trade items here? And sometimes they'll even offer to throw in a little bit of currency on top of that. Like, hey, I have 10 exalts, I can give you that for your time. Here's the problem. Even if there are none on the market that are similar at the moment, it's an item that people don't really care about. So unless tomorrow Mathil uses one in his build, if you put it up for 200 exalts, it's never going to sell. And more likely, it's worth 10 to 20 chaos, which is exactly what I bought this one for. This scam relies on an item that doesn't have any value, but due to variance in Path of Exile is incredibly rare, so they can pretend it has value, and you don't have a market to compare it against. There's 2 very simple ways to avoid this scam. The first is, don't accept items when you're selling something of high value. Just accept raw currency. The second of which is, if you're not 100% sure you know what an item is worth, and there aren't several others on the market, don't accept it as a trade. Tell them, hey, if it's worth 200x, that's awesome. Go sell it, and then you can buy my headhunter for 80. After all, if the item really would sell for 200, if you put it up for 80, it should sell pretty quickly, and you'll be able to make that trade no problem. The fact that they're not doing that proves they are, in fact, a scammer. Now, there are a couple more common scams that I want to talk about. But before I get into them, if you've been enjoying this video or you find it helpful, then please do leave a like, as that's a great way to help me out as well. It'll mean my videos promoted more in the YouTube algorithm. If you know any new players, then please share this video with them, as new players are most often the target of a lot of these scams. If you're looking for more content, then sub to the channel and ring the bell to be notified whenever I upload, or click through the card right now and check out 10 Gaming Thoughts, my second channel, where I'm going to be talking about several indie games in the near future. And a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members for the continued support. A little more about that at the end though. For now, let's get into another type of scam that I see far too often, and this one especially targets new players, which is the 6-link scam. This works a lot like the first scam I mentioned, except this time, instead of swapping out a valuable item for something that looks similar, it's swapping out a 6-linked chess piece for one that's 4-linked and 2-linked. This relies on you not being able to see that something is 6-linked very easily. Now personally, in terms of this scam, I really wish GGG would solve it by adding just the number of links somewhere in the tooltip. For example, on the tooltip here, it should say 6-linked or maybe BBBGGG, just something so that I know easily that it is in fact a linked item, and I don't have to rely on looking at the links visibly, as on certain bases, if your eyesight isn't great, it's pretty hard to see. Without my glasses, I probably wouldn't be able to tell if certain items were or weren't 6-linked. And unfortunately, this is also the hardest to avoid. But the best solution that I found is don't buy the cheapest item. After all, a scammer wants as many people to trade them as possible, and they want someone to not really be on their guard. So if a listing starts at 2x, buy one for 2.1 or 2.2x. Yes, you're paying a little bit more, but you'll probably get some better rolls on your item. You can certainly look for that, and the odds of you being scammed are far lower than if you bought the cheapest one. The last scam that I see exclusively happens when someone is trying to buy your item, and that is the price swap scam. So they'll take an item that's, let's just say, worth 10 exalts, and they'll message you and they'll say, hey, I want to buy this item that you have for sale for 1 exalt. If you're not paying attention, you might not notice that you put the price as 10 and you'll sell it to them for 1 exalt. At least that's their hope. The best way to avoid this is keep your tabs organized by price. So if I know that everything in my priced tab is worth, let's just say 3 exalts or more, and someone wants to buy an item in that tab for 1 exalt, then I'll immediately be suspicious because, well, why aren't you buying something from the 0.9x tab? I don't have any items that I sell for 1 exalt. They're either in my 0.9x tab at 0.9x, or they're 3 in the price tab. If you organize by price, usually across several tabs, then it's a lot easier to spot this scam. Now that said, not everyone has as many stash tabs as I do. And I can't really say, well, just double check if the item's expensive, because someone might take a 10x item that you're selling and say, oh yeah, you're selling that for 1 chaos. Trust me, you're definitely selling it for 1 chaos. Which means the best thing to do here is just double check the price you have the item listed for before you take it out to trade someone. And taking a second to do a little bit of diligence is honestly the best way to avoid scamming in Path of Exile as a whole. Spend an extra minute looking at the trade window before you just click accept. Make sure that when you mouse over something, you actually check the item's name, especially if it's a rare item, or you double check all the mods. And when someone's messaging you or putting currency up, make sure all the amounts are correct. Most of the time, scammers are hoping that you're distracted or you're impatient, and I get it. Sometimes trading isn't the most fun, and you just want to get back to killing monsters, but taking that extra time will guarantee that you'll never be scammed. And I think there's a lot of value in that. Now, I know that sometimes I was a little bit vague about what the scams people were trying to do are, and that's because I don't want this video to become a guide on how to scam in Path of Exile. I was certainly talking about them, and I talked about the mechanics of how some worked, but I'm hoping by making this, I'm educating people more on how to avoid being scammed, rather than just telling the scammers how to scam better, since no trade system is perfect. And at the end of the day, the only thing that guarantees you're never scammed in Path of Exile is just doing your due diligence. Make sure to price check items, make sure to take that extra minute. If you do that, no one can scam you, because you'll at least be aware of what's happening within the trade. And always remember to be doubly on your guard if someone declines the trade for any reason. I'm not saying everyone who declines a trade is a scammer. I mean, hell, I've misclicked and declined trades plenty of times. I've even sometimes got the amount of currency wrong, especially if I've been playing for a while or I'm a little bit tired. So do be aware that sometimes people just make mistakes. They're not all trying to scam you. But a person who makes a mistake will correct it after the first trade. And a scammer will just get more sus as time goes on. And so I'm curious, have you ever been scammed in Path of Exile? And if so, do you think one of the tips in this video would have helped prevent it? And if you have any other tips on how people can prevent themselves from being scammed while trading in Path of Exile, then please leave them down in the comments below. I realize the trade system isn't perfect, and there's a lot of improvement that could be done, such as GGG clearly denoting how many sockets or links an item has. But no trade system is ever going to be perfect. No matter what you do, as long as people can freely trade items, someone's going to find a way to scam. The best we can do is minimize the options and raise awareness. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.